Okay. So thank you guys for being here. I will ask, I'm going to poke at Alex and Kyle. We know Tara's having an issue with her video. Yes, please give me video because it's way more enjoyable for the teacher to actually have the faces of the humans that they're talking to. So first of all, I want to thank you guys for participating with me on a sunny June afternoon to work on business planning. I know that sounds really riveting, but we're going to try and make this really fun. What I want to first, I have to give you a disclaimer. I have never taught this entirely on Zoom. It's always been an in-class interactive session. So we're going to play this by ear, and I can almost guarantee you that I'm going to have some bugs in how I think and how I've tried to set it up to move from screen to screen, etc. So bear with me is what I'm asking you in terms of how we do it. The reason I divided it up into 2 sessions is normally when we do it in the classroom, it's like a whole day, there's some interactive stuff, we break for lunch, we carry on. So I don't really know exactly what my timing is going to be today, and it will also depend on what you guys need. So my thinking was that we would do sort of what I would normally have done in the morning as our first session, so we can really have a good discussion about it. Then you'll have some homework, and then we'll come back on the second session and talk about the implementation of what we've worked on and answer any questions. So that's my theory, subject to how it actually goes. So just bear with me, okay? So, oh my goodness, Tara, I'm so jealous. Look at you sitting in the sun. It's beautiful. So first of all, I'm just going to take a second and I'm going to take everybody off mute. And I'm going to ask everybody to quickly introduce themselves because I know we have people here who don't know each other. So I'm going to start with Lynette. I'm going to ask you to say who you are, how long you've been in real estate, something interesting about yourself, and maybe what you hope to get out of these sessions.
Well, I am a newbie. My name's Lynette Carter, and I'm with the De Silva Goss Group. And as I said, I'm a newbie by 9 months. So coming into real estate and dealing with COVID and dealing with all these multiple offers is a rude awakening. Boy, it's quick training. Anyways, so I'm on a team of 5 other realtors and a transaction coordinator, and I'm looking, obviously being new to this, looking to get some tips and tricks for business planning.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, Nicole. You are talking to yourself.
Yep, I just saw the note. I've been in real estate for about 3 years now, but only 1.5 years licensed. I work with my husband as a team. I used to work in marketing, so that's where I started to bring my expertise, and then decided to take the leap and become an agent myself. So because it's still somewhat new to me, I figure any tips I can get on planning are going to be useful.
Awesome, perfect. Samit.
I have been in real estate for the last 9 months. I think me and Lynette joined together. So it's been going great, and thinking of developing the business now. Understood how it works in real estate. So thinking of expanding. So it's a good session. Hopefully today I'll learn some new things.
Awesome. Tara, we'll let you go.
Hi, I'm Tara, and I'm in PEI, and I partnered with my daughter, and I started real estate to partner with my mom back in 2000, and I started partnering with my daughter in 2000 and, I don't know, 6 years ago?
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I think she's 6 years now. And that's it. If I am unmuted and pictures on, the dogs are going to be everywhere and barking, and yeah, it's going to be interesting.
It's all good. We'll mute you as we go, but when we need you to tag in, right? It's perfect.
Perfect, yeah.
Okay, Alex.
Yeah, so I'm relatively new. I got my temporary license in April and got my full license just last week. So still pretty new and green. and just excited to see that. I feel pretty overwhelmed with all the things in terms of the business that needs to be set up, and what I need to have all my ducks in a line to start pulling some transactions in. So just really excited to see the scope of everything today.
Awesome. Perfect. Kyle. Kyle is muted. There he is. And there he is.
All right, I'll even start video for a second. So first of all, I apologize for the way I look. I legit was just working out, forgot I had this business planning session and didn't have time to get changed or showered.
We don't
But
care.
I've been in real estate for 6 years, 7 years now, something like that. I've been a slacker. I like to vacation too much, so my business isn't where it should be. But this year I'm revamping and really giving her my all.
Awesome.
And I'm gonna give her my camera now.
What I love about a group like this is everybody's in a slightly different place, right? So that's one of the neat things about when we do this together is how can we also share different things together that will help you guys in your businesses. So I think Tara might be, other than me, the vet in the room in terms of how long we've been doing this. But then we have a combination of different experiences and some new and or restarting, which is, you know what, that's a great place to be. So one of the things we're going to do today, let me just find my agenda so I don't completely lose track of myself and become a complete squirrel. So you will have received an email. You should have received 1 or 2 emails from Erin, and you will have received a student manual. So just so that you guys know, for anyone who has ever been taught by me before, I do not read things to you that your brains can read on your own. I am not going to read 150 pages of student manual today. We all might as well just have a nap because that's boring, okay? What I want to do is to interpret the information in there, and then you're gonna go on your own and read it like a grown-up business person after, okay? And it should make more sense to you having discussed some of these pieces first. There will be the odd thing that I'm gonna highlight because I do have some slides that they give me, but really I'm not that type of instructor. That's my personal style. I don't find it as effective personally in terms of what you're going to retain. You'll also have received a worksheet. You should have received a worksheet with a personal budget, and we're going to go through that as well. So the first thing I want to talk about today, and before I share my screen and get into a bunch of different slides and things like that with you, I really want to have a conversation about sort of why are we here? What is the purpose of what we're doing? And how will this lead into the material that we're going to cover? And so generally speaking, I have a flip chart out and we're throwing ideas out at each other. So I'm going to make notes or I'll open up a screen and we'll take notes that way. So bear with me. Okay. So one of the big things that I would say is a challenge for people who are in real estate, whether they've been in it for 5 minutes like Alex or many, many years like myself, is really making sure that we are in the right mindset. And I think actually, Kyle, you actually expressed it really well as in your statement in saying, you know what, I really wasn't in it. I was sort of playing with it. I was vacationing. I was sort of part-time. Like I wasn't like in. Is that a fair assessment, Kyle? Used to unmute for taking me an answer.
Yes, that's a very fair statement.
Okay. Okay, so the reason that I mention that is because everything that we are going to do today and potentially Thursday, depending on our timing, is based on getting our heads into the right space. And Lynette will have heard some of this stuff before. The theory is that this will reinforce for her things that regularly come out of my mouth. God love her that she's on my team. Is really, it's making sure that we're looking at ourselves as business people. And I would argue that 99% of realtors do not. They really view it as like kind of a sales gig versus a business. And there's a big, big, big difference, okay? So when we're talking about mindset, we're gonna spend some time on this because it's really important in everything else and the decisions you're gonna make and the action you're gonna take from being in this course versus not taking. So let's say, for example, so I will ask Nicole, so how many units did you and your husband do last year? Just give me a rough number.
About 25.
Okay. And your average sale price between the South Shore, she's on South Shore and in HR, I'm kind of in the middle. Give me an average number.
Here, let me do the math really
Like
quickly.
225, 250, 300, like just throw anything out of me.
Probably around 250,
So I'm sorry, you said 26?
25.
25. Okay, so that means that you sold $6.25 million worth of product. Fair? That's a lot of widgets, right? That's a lot of things. $6.2 million in product. That's 25 units. That's not 100 units. That's 25 units. That's a lot of things, right? When we're looking at these types of numbers, it's a concept of a mindset. So let me ask you guys a foundational question. When you got into real estate, what was your decision on how much money you needed to make? Can someone give me the mindset of what you were trying to accomplish? I need to sell this many houses because I'm trying to make this much money. Or how much money are you trying to make? Like, do you guys know what I'm talking about here? Samit, you give me an example.
So how I look at it, is most of my average sales is around 250 to 300. So, I try to understand, like everybody knows the ratio of 80-20, right? So, you most of the time you work for a regular priced home, like, we did average is 300. But sometimes what you're saying is, what Nicole did is 6 million, over 6 million in sale. I could put a little bit of effort on something else, which could create a higher value or revenue through a less number product. Is that what you are trying to explain?
No, I didn't phrase it properly. That's not your fault. That's my fault.
Okay.
So let's say, for example, what did you do as a job before you got into real estate?
Well, I used to be in the bank.
Okay. And so at the bank, they paid you a salary, right?
Correct.
And so when you made a decision in your family that you were going to get into real estate, did you say, well, I need to make at least as much money as I made at the bank?
I said more than that.
Right. But but you know what I mean? Like, if I'm going to do this, I need to make
right.
at least that much money. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's correct.
Would anybody else have made that mindset that when they decided to get into it, they needed to replace their sort of annual income that they had in a job?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Yes? Smiling, nodding at me? Yes. Okay. So the reason that I ask that is because that is the traditional mindset of realtors, that when they're tracking their commission to make sure they've made as much money as they made in their last job and maybe a bit more. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the standard, that's the bar you have. It's the only bar you have to start with. Fair?
Right.
The challenge being is most realtors don't shake off that mindset. And so what happens is we still think in the concept of replacing salary versus building a business, which is not the same thing. Okay, so the reason that I ask that is because if you need to replace 60,000, 80,000, 100,000, whatever the heck it is that you made, 40,000, doesn't matter, whatever the heck number, what happens is if we don't have it defined as to how we're going to get to higher than that, human nature will curb your activity to that safe zone. Because you know you can do that. You've done that before. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it sounds like a weird conversation to have now, I realize, is because it is very mindset related. And if we are thinking that, okay, that's my absolute bare bones number that I have to hit for revenue versus I want to grow and I want to stretch and I want to change my standard of living and my savings and my family and whatever, then our mindset is different in terms of what we're going to do, right? So if we're thinking about business, so I'm going to pick on Nicole again because she gave me a number. Nicole, do you have a functioning business plan?
I do not know.
Okay, it's not a judgment, like 9
No,
minutes.
no. I know.
Okay.
I'll be sorry. I'll be right back. I'm just letting my dog out.
There's no worries.
Sorry.
Dog does not care that we're on Zoom, not interested in our schedule. I may have to get up and let my 16-year-old geriatric dog out as well. We'll just have a pre-disclaimer for that. We will take a couple breaks through this as well. So the reason that I'm mentioning that is because I want you to think of a really successful store. I want you to think of a successful restaurant. I want you to think of a successful online business that sells whatever. Do you think that any of these businesses who sell $6 million, $4 million, $2 million, even $1 million worth of product do not have a business plan? They all do. But yet realtors don't. It makes no sense, right? Realtors want to do, $10 million, $20 million in business, and they have literally no idea how much their cost of sales is. They have no contingency plans for, slow periods in the market. They don't have investment strategies because they're just rolling from deal to deal. Does that sound like a regular realtor to you? Yeah. And that's great.
Sounds like me for sure.
Sorry?
Sounds like me for sure.
But it's totally normal. Like, you get into this business and you learn how to not hopefully get sued. You finally figure out how to write a deal, and then you just kind of keep going, right? And no one ever stops to teach you what we're going to talk about today, which is how to actually own a business. The goal that most people have when they start a business, I don't care what the hell you're selling, is that at some point you can retire and have it continue to provide income. You could travel, you could sell it for a significant amount of money and do something else with your life or retire. That's a business. A business is saleable. A business is self-sustaining at a certain point. Think of a successful franchise, right? The original guy is not standing there flipping the burger at McDonald's. He died, right? But it's worth $1 gazillion because they built a business, right? So this is a mindset, because there is absolutely no limit on how much you can do or what you can accomplish in your business. In real estate, we have no ceiling. It's up to you where you stop. But I can assure you that you will create complications in your business if it is not run like a business. You'll be fine for the first 10 or 12 deals a year, maybe up to 25. It'll just sort of follow. But the ability to really grow and make good decisions will be limited without a plan. So the purpose of today is to talk about how do we get to that place. And then the other part of it is going to be, okay, well, that's all fine and good. We've come up with this brilliant plan. Now, how in the world do I implement it? So that's why we're doing this in 2 stages, because I don't want to just leave you with a bunch of numbers and then you're going, okay, now what? That doesn't help you either. So that's why we divide this up. It's a slightly different type of business planning session than you may have expected. So the reason that I discuss this is because here's the mindset. So let's talk about goals, like ballpark numbers in your head. We're going to finalize goals as we go. So Samit, how many houses do you plan on selling in 2020?
I plan 25.
25?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so, and your average sale you said is around 250 as well?
Yeah, around that.
Okay, so that puts you at, and the only reason I know is because I literally just did the math, 6.2 million. I won't pretend I did that on my own. Okay, Alex, what about you? Just off the top of your head.
Yeah, it was 12 was my goal when I initially started.
Okay, and that's a completely reasonable goal as a shiny new agent. So do you have an idea of what your average sale price would be yet?
I'll say 3.
Okay. So that puts you at 3.6 million. Lynette?
I think my average, I think it was 12. I have to go back on my sheet and find out.
Your goal of units?
Yeah,
16, I can assure you.
I thought it was 16, but I couldn't quite remember. Anyway, the average sale has seemed to be $350.
Okay, so I'm going to put you at 300 just because we always try to go. It's great when you get a really high average, but it's not typical, right? So that puts you at 4.8. Okay, so Kyle, give me a number.
Looking around. So for 2020, I'm not going to talk about those numbers because right now I have one sale and I'm not looking forward to those. But 2021, I plan on selling 30.
Okay, so
With
let's,
average.
wait, let's go back. There's no negative in this classroom. Let's be clear. So let's go back. You still have, oh, by the way, 6 entire months in 2020. So unless you roll up the rug right now, we still got time to do stuff. So
After vacation.
no, you've had 3 months of vacation. You're done. So
That is true.
so let's just pick a nice simple number. Let's say 6.
Okay. I'd go with 10, but this
Well,
works.
we're going to be conservative since you were doing 0 a minute ago. Work with me here, right?
Sure.
So I'm going to give you a 250 average just because you're an HRM. So it's kind of hard to sell almost anything less than 250 at this point.
Yeah, no,
and
250
Tara,
works.
yeah. And Tara, what about you?
I have no idea.
Okay. So this is going to be part of the homework. And this is actually really, I'm so glad you said that because that is an important thing to know, to track what you're doing, what's in your pipeline. We're going to talk about that. Okay. So let's just say hypothetically, I mean, you and Ashlyn are like, Ashton are always winning, you know, getting nominated for, you know, top production. That was really loud. You've got her muted. Oh, okay. So, Sarah, I gotta mute you. I don't know what's going on there. Okay, so I'm just gonna randomly throw numbers out at Tara. So let's just say she did, her and Ashton did, say 25 units. I could be more than that off the top of my head, but we'll just give a number. The average sale price is lower in PEI. I believe you would probably be, I'm gonna open up the chat because maybe then that will work for Tara if we can't hear her. Would you say, Tara, that if we used a 2 to 225 average, what do you think? 150, okay. Yeah, it just depends on where you are. Okay. Okay, so she's at 150, and any idea on how many units? You said no idea, but like 25, 10, no idea. I'm gonna use 25. That's what I'm gonna use because it's between you and Ashton. So 25 times 150, that puts her at 3.75. So we have, for Kyle, who's deciding to come out of vacation mode, we have 1.5 million approximately. That's going to happen in the rest of 2020. And then for everybody else, we have anywhere from 3.7 to $6.2 million in sales. That's a lot of sales. So this comes back to the mindset. If you're sitting in your home office, and let's be honest, we're all spending a lot more time in our home offices now. But if you're sitting in your home office and you're going, well, what do I need to do today? Because we're going to talk about that as well, about what do you actually need to do in your day. But if you have the mindset that you are $8 million, multi-million-dollar salesperson, do you think you might do different activities than if you just think you're going to go and sell a house? Does this make sense to you guys? Things like tracking your budget, things like monitoring your expenses, things like, I don't think I'm going to check Facebook. I think I'm going to call a human about sales because I am trying to sell $10 million worth of something. The reason this is so important is it's at the core of how you will be consistent in running this business that we're talking about. And whether you guys like it or not, you're running a business. And I can assure you, Revenue Canada believes you're running a business and expects you to run your business like a business. They aren't going to accept, well, you know, I wasn't really paying attention. You know, I'm just selling $10 million worth of stuff, but, you know, I didn't really keep track of my expenses. They're not going to accept that. Let me just be very clear. That's not going to be the standard. So the challenge is we want this sort of freewheeling, like we lost Tara, free moving around of you know, going to go out when I want and work when I want and do what I want, but yet we want to make a ton of money. And yet we don't want to do the other side of the business, which is this management element. Okay. So unfortunately, I'm going to potentially pee on your rainbow. There aren't successful businesses that sell millions of dollars worth of things that don't have structure and that don't have a plan. Okay. So the difference between the agents who last in this business and create financial health and create wealth for themselves and their family are those that run it like a business. So that's the mindset that I need us to have as we go forward. You are selling multi-million dollars worth of product. If you are a store, that would be an awful lot of stuff that would be coming through as your inventory. So it's getting to that place in your mind where you recognize that you guys are actually a lot bigger business people than you are giving yourselves credit for. Okay, so we need to have that in our heads. So any questions on that before we move forward? Thoughts, ahas, anything that came from that? Nothing? We're good, we've absorbed it?
Yeah, I think what you're saying is,
$1 company.
Sorry, Lynette, I didn't hear you. You and Simi talked at the same time.
Rest, I have $4 million of inventory. That's freaking awesome.
That's what it is, right? Like if you were a store and you said, yeah, I'm going to do $4 million within sales, people would be like, wow,
Yeah.
that's really impressive, right? Like you're kind of like big stuff. I was going to say something else, but I'm trying to PG myself. It's a problem for me, just so the record. I don't promise I won't slip as we go through the class. Simi, you were going to say something.
what I'm getting from what you're saying is that we need to change our mindset and start thinking as a business owner than just working as a realtor.
Yes.
Because if you plan to grow, which everybody does, you got to have that system in place from now, I think.
Right. So here's a question, and this is something we'll talk about in more detail. So this won't apply to someone like Lynette because her cost of sales are different because she's on a team. So it's a little bit different. There's always some pluses and minuses for everybody in their group and how they work. But for example, I can tell you that my business partner and I, we know exactly how many dollars we need to spend on every single listing we take. We know what our average cost of sales are on a listing. We have to know that. We have to budget for that because we have to know we have the money sitting aside so that when I get another listing or my team gets another listing, I have the money to pay the photography, the tour, the measuring, the Matterport, the blah. They're expecting me to have that money sitting there at the ready. Would you not agree with that, Lynette? Right? She doesn't want to hear that I don't have a plan and, oh God, my credit card's maxed and I can't pay for the photography I told you I was going to pay for. Or you're juggling when you're going to list something or what you can offer to that consumer because your cash is maxed. That is not how multi-million-dollar salespeople function. So we need to plan it. But before we plan it, we have to know it. And that's the other piece is, and exactly as you say it to me, you want to grow a business, you need to know your costs, okay? So let's just divert for a moment and talk about the mindset of being in business as we, I don't know, just went through a global pandemic that's probably not over and is going to change our way we function. So there was a bunch of messaging that came out from KW International, it came out from us, it came out from me, it came out from Aaron about watching your expenses. This is right now when this happened, this is when you need to trim the fat in your business. And we know that lots of the agents had no idea what they had subscribed to, what they were paying for, things they were committed to that they couldn't get out of. And that was that wake up moment to realize, oh my goodness, is this something I should still be paying for? Why am I paying for this? Do I actually get any business out of it? And those are those types of evaluations in a situation like we just went through, where those realtors that have a business mindset and have a plan could easily go, bing, 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 getting rid of that. I'm going to defer this plan until, say, September instead of doing it in April. Not that I don't want to do it, but I need to change based on my cash flow. One of the things that we have to have when we're thinking about mindset, and you've heard this a million times on television shows and news reports and, you know, documentaries about cash is king in business. You've all heard this, right? Yes, please smile and nod at me, somebody. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So real estate is no different because you have cycles of activity. And so learning how to plan your cash, to manage your business, to continue to pay yourself, etc., goes back to this mindset, because you won't make those decisions unless you're thinking about what you're doing like a business. Okay. So on that note, so we've had that conversation. So essentially, if I was going to summarize into one sort of catchphrase, what I'm trying to accomplish here with mindset is I'm looking for you to think of yourselves as business people and not salespeople. Salespeople are people who, for example, they're a pharmaceutical rep and they work for, I don't know, I can't think of a company that sells pharmaceutical stuff, but you know, the people that roll into the doctor's office and, you know, sell them whatever drug. They're a salesperson. Yes, they get commission. Yes, they get bonuses, but they're not a business. They're an employee of said sales company. And they don't have anything to sell, and they don't have the same tax deductions, and they don't have the same freedom because they don't own a business. They're just a commission salesperson. Not that it's not a great job. I don't mean it that way, but that's not the same as owning a business. So you guys are business people, not salespeople. So once we have that in our heads, everything else that I talk about later, in theory, is going to absorb differently into your brain because you're thinking of yourselves as business owners and business people versus this person who's trying to replace a salary with commission. You see the difference? Okay. Okay. Anything that anybody wants to add before I move on? Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, so now, in theory, I have an ability to do a whiteboard with you guys. Let's see if this works. Okay. Can we see my little thing here?
Yep.
Okay, so this is my flip chart because I don't have a flip chart. So what I want to talk about now is that we have this mindset. So if we're this business owner and we're going to set a plan, start a plan for what we're going to do for the remainder of 2020, and then how will that domino into 2021? One thing you have to know, if you don't already know this, you want to own this message in your soul, is what you do in real estate today, you will reap the rewards in 90 to 120 days from now. Does everybody know what I'm talking about when I say that? Nicole is nodding yes.
Yeah, like any leads, for example, that you start cultivating now will probably be actually coming into fruition in about 90 to 120 days.
Yeah. So if you meet a buyer, you know, like I met a buyer the other day, we had a buyer's consult yesterday, where, you know, she's pre-approved, you know, we're looking for a property. Let's say we find one in the next 30 days and then she closes 60 days from that. I'm 90 days before I get paid for the activities that I did today. So what does that mean in terms of how you're planning?
You always have to plan ahead.
Yes. And so the other piece of it is that if I do nothing now, I'm going to pick on Kyle. Kyle, if I'm doing nothing now, then I will have nothing in the fall. Because you reap what you sow now. It takes time to feel the benefit. So for our newer agents, so I can tell you from working with Lynette from, you know, birth of as a baby agent, essentially, and I know it's the same person, me, you know, we kept saying to her, like, you're doing it right, be patient, like keep doing it, just you have to keep doing it, it's all gonna funnel in. And now, because she's a very good listener, she's busy, like she's really busy because all of that legwork up to that is now turning into what she's going to benefit from for the next 6 months. But had she done nothing for the last 5 to 6 months, she'd have a whole lot of nothing coming in the pipeline. So that's connected to how we plan and how we do our goals. So there's something I'm going to, now in theory, this is going to work. That's really off of color. How do I change my color? I don't know how to change my color. Oh, format. Let's make that bold. Can you guys see that? Is that too light?
Good.
Okay. I think I would rather, just one moment. I'm going to open up a Google Sheet because this is just annoying me. Bear with me. Okay, going to switch to sharing my actual screen because I can format like a normal person instead of in this whiteboard where it's going to annoy me because I think it's working like a picture thing, which is not helpful. Okay, so let's make this. Okay. Okay, so. Okay, you guys can see this?
Yep.
Okay, so this is an acronym for goals, okay? So essentially, the concept here is that we are going to have goals that are SMART. So if you already know the answers to this, don't tell me all the answers right away. So and we're gonna use this as a measure as we go forward. So what does anybody think the S stands for? Anybody?
Sales?
Sorry, what did you say, Lynette?
Sales?
Nope. This is about a goal.
Oh.
If my goal starts with an S, would anybody have any idea what it might be?
Simple?
Systems?
That is a good one. That's not what I'm going to use. Anybody else? Come on, thing. Specific. So what do I mean by that? So we're going to talk about that. So let's use, for example, I'm going to lose weight. Is that specific? So how do I know I did it?
You have to quantify.
Oh, I lost 0.01 pounds. Woo! Check. I'm there. It's a great goal. Perfect. So what else do you think I want to be able to do with this goal? With an M.
Measurable.
Yes. If I had prizes, you would get one. I don't actually have any. But okay, what do we think an A stands for when it comes to goals? And we're going to talk about this in more detail once we get the little letters out.
I swear I'm not cheating, but it's assignable.
Assignable? No.
Action.
No. But those
Accountability.
that one works definitely. Also, attainable.
Attainability.
You can use that or accountable.
Achievable.
Same idea. Yeah. Okay, so R. What do you think R is?
Realistic.
Yes. Now I have this problem that when I'm typing in front of humans, apparently it's like my first day in grade school typing. And T. This one gets everybody, usually.
Time.
No? Anybody? So I'm going to tell you that it's truthful. And this might seem like a weird note. So we're going to talk about this for a second now. So the reason that this matters is that as we build our goals and our business plan together, so goal/business plan, same idea. You have a bunch of goals within your specific business plan. We have to be specific. So for example, I'm going to sell more than last year. That's not specific. I did, 25 units last year. Next year, I'm going to do 30, which would be, a 20% increase, et cetera. Like it has to be, what exactly are you going to do? Measurable. Measurable is both a number and quantifiable in time, i.e., I want to lose weight. I want to lose 10 pounds by X date, etc. Like we're starting to get, do you see how we're starting to refine what we're doing, right? Attainable and accountable. So attainable goes into other elements. It crosses a little bit into realistic, but in the sense of being accountable. Am I prepared to be accountable for the specific items and the actions that are going to be required for this? Do I have this system set up to be accountable? Is it attainable in the sense of, I don't know, I've been licensed for X amount of minutes and I'm going to sell within a different geographic area that I know what I'm doing, so is it attainable in that reality? Realistic. So this is the big one, in the sense that this is not to ever make your goals too small or to limit your abilities, but this is more about reality. So I think Samit, I think you are the only one in the group right now with small humans in your life. Kyle, I don't think you have any small humans, do you? Nope, I have no answer. Samit, you have a little one, right? And I don't think anybody else has any little ones. So, for example, if your spouse or your partner, if you work different shifts, who's looking after the child? Is the child in daycare? What are the family commitments you have? If you say, oh, I'm going to work 80 hours a week and have no family life and I'm never home to see my child, that's probably not realistic. Or, what am I able to do? Okay. Is it realistic to say that I'm going to go from selling 5 units to 50 units if I'm not going to make other changes in my life and in my support system, in my accountability, in my training, in my budget to make those things happen? That's where we have to have that reality conversation sometimes about what is a reasonable amount of growth per year, what is reasonable based on your skill set, your circle of influence, your budget, all of those things, and to build it versus going from 0 to 1,000. But let's talk about truthful for a minute. This might seem like a strange one to add into goals when we're talking about business planning. Does anybody know what I mean by truthful?
Track them truthfully?
No, yes, but no.
Like
Being
you need to be
honest about what you
committed.
actually think you're going to be able to do.
So Lynette, you said being honest about what you actually think you're going to be able to do. So that's part of it. Samit, you had said something as well.
You got to be committed to it. Is that what? Little bit?
That's part of it. So here's what I'll give you a really simple analogy, and you will know someone in your life where this was probably true, or maybe it was yourself. So I'll be the first person to fess up. I was a smoker for many years, and everybody was very helpful in telling me that I should quit smoking, right? If anyone was ever a smoker, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Or you've told the person in your life who's a smoker, and how's that working for you? Not so well, right? Because that person hasn't decided to do it. And so commitment is a great word that you used, Samit, because until you are truthful that this is your goal and you own it, you're not going to do it. You can't set your goals to meet somebody else's expectations. Because when it is a snowstorm and miserable and you're driving, hanging on for dear life to your steering wheel to get to do a showing so you don't lose this freaking house in the middle of multiple offers in a blizzard, you better believe in your goal as to why you're doing that. When you're tired, when you're dealing with a cranky human, when you're in a stressful, frustrating deal, what is going to keep you going and doing that next piece in your business is because you are truthfully, honestly committed to that action. So when you do a goal, I always want you to do that personal self-check on it, because your goals are not meant to please any other human. They are not for the office. They are not for a spouse. They are yours. And until you own it, you will not hit it. Make sense?
Yeah.
And you can put that into any place in your life. Weight, health, financial savings, whatever you're doing. Unless you make the decision, then that people talk about willpower. It's not about willpower. It's about making the decision that it's your goal. You want to sell X amount of units, then that you have to make that decision you're going to do it. And nothing's going to get in your way to do it. But if you're picking numbers because it sounds like a great number and it seems like everyone else is doing it, it's not going to hold. You won't do it. Kyle will be on vacation again. It has to be what you want. And so that's one of the things that I want to make sure you also understand, because remember, if we're business people, then you get to decide the business you're going to own. It's yours. And nobody else should tell you what you need to do. We can guide you based on financial realities, etc., but it's your decision, it's your business, because you're not an employee, you're not a salesperson, you're a business owner. So do you see how everything we talked about at the beginning, it's already starting to filter down into the basics? So when we start to do your business goals, we will be applying this self-check on everything that we decide to do. So I've had this conversation with Lynette. She may not have realized we've had this conversation, but now she'll realize we've had this conversation where I've said, so maybe we should consider this option, et cetera, because what we're doing is we're repackaging the same thing in something that will actually go check, yeah, it's specific, yeah, it's measurable, yes, it's attainable, yes, it's realistic, and yet you own it. Okay, so I know this seems like a weird thing. The next thing I want to talk about, and it is connected to this, and it is your big why. Has anybody ever heard of a big why? Lynette has. Anybody else?
No.
Samit, ever heard of that?
Yes, I have a few times recently.
So Kyle, I don't know, have you ever heard of big why?
Oh yeah,
Yes.
yeah, several times over the past 6 years.
Okay. So I want to connect it to your business, because I want you to think again, anybody who owns a really successful business or really successful brand, and I'm not talking about successful in terms of big, I'm talking about successful in terms of satisfaction, longevity, you know, the local corner business that's been there for 50 years and they love what they do and they're committed to their customers. Successful doesn't mean gigantic. Let's be very clear that that's not the measurement that we're using here. But what's really important, and it goes back to what we were talking about, snowstorms, etc., big why, it's trying to figure out, why are you doing what you're doing right now? And what's important to know is your big why should change with your life. So I'll give you a personal example. My big why when I first got into real estate sales was very financially driven. Like, I really needed to accomplish a certain goal, but the financial goal was actually tied to what my commitments were to my family and to my daughter, to be able to provide X or Y and a certain standard of living, and commitments that I had for her was actually the big why. The money wasn't the big why. It was, what was I trying to do with the money? Do you see the difference? Everybody talks about money as being a big why, but I will guarantee you, after 17 years in this business, the money's not the big why. It's what you're trying to accomplish in your life with the money. That's the big why. That's what gets you going in a snowstorm. That's what has you working on a deal late at night, you know, losing sleep, you know, doing all these foolish things that we do for clients. It's that big why. And it will change. I've shared this story with several of you before. If you have heard it before, I apologize, but if you haven't heard it, I think it's relevant. So for those of you that do know, I made a change, I guess it's almost 4 years ago now, 3.5, 4 years ago. I had purchased a house. I had bought a house to move my senior citizen geriatric terminally ill mother in with me. And so my partner, he and his daughter, myself, my daughter, dog, cat, and my 80-year-old mother all moved in together. And we made that decision because it was what was the right decision for my mother. And I was in a position to do this with her and look after her. So we made this decision, bought a very particular house in order to have it suit her physical needs, et cetera, et cetera. So moved in with my mom, which is not necessarily everything we plan to do when we're at a certain age, but you know, I'm blessed that I was able to do that. I'm not going to say there weren't days I didn't want to poke my mom in the eye with a fork. That would be a lie. I'm a daughter. She was my mother. It is what it is. Regardless. So we did that. And at that time, my mother's health was not well. She lived for another 2.5 years after that and then passed away, but we were lucky to have her here. But what happened was I realized that my mother's physical health was connected directly to decisions she had made earlier on in her life. They were good decisions at the time, done with the best information that she had, but she smoked for 50 years. She ate a certain way based on the fact that she had been born in 1936. Women of that generation didn't specifically exercise. You know, our diets were very different. You know, you smoked for X amount of years, and at a certain point, even when you stop, the damage is done. And so part of the decisions that I had to make in terms of moving with my mother was related to the fact that she had made certain choices with no ill intent, and now I had to make choices to sort of deal with and fix those scenarios. Does that make sense to everybody? So what ended up happening is I made a decision that I had become a couch potato. I was probably in the worst physical shape of my life, and I made a decision to make a commitment to go and work with a trainer. So I've been doing that for 3.5 years now. And at the beginning, it was excruciating. It was awful. It was so early in the morning. I was scraping my car at 6:30 in the morning to go have someone yell at me about lifting something. But I did it. But my big why in doing it wasn't the physical changes that I would end up with, although of course that became motivating as I went. But ultimately my big why as to why I was spending more money on a trainer than I did on my car, and why I was doing this and my schedule was not to be touched by my team and I had to go to the trainer, was because I made a big why decision that I have one daughter and I know better. And I was not going to put her in the same position that I was put in, with no ill intent on my mother's behalf. Please don't think that that's what I think. That I could be in better shape. I could have some strength. I could have a different cardiovascular condition. I could be healthier. I can't control if I get cancer or dementia or Parkinson's or whatever. But if my body was in better shape, then how that would impact her and her requirements to look after me would change. So that was my big why. Now I'm 4 years in, my big why has changed from the same activity to it's a piece of who I am now, and it keeps me sane and does all these other things because I won't stop. So the big why has already been accomplished, and now the big why has changed. But that is what made my commitment to make sure I hit my targets for sales so that I had the budget to continue to pay for the trainer, so that I would make sure that I went to bed at night to get up at a stupid hour in the morning to go drive 30 minutes to this trainer in a snowstorm. There has to be more to it than I want to lose 10 pounds. That's not going to be a big enough why. So when you're doing a business, you're going to, you think about restaurant owners and all these businesses that have suffered through what we've gone through right now with COVID, and all of the changes and sacrifices that these people are making. They're doing it not just because of the financial commitment to their business. They're doing it because it's their passion. It's what they want to do. And so in this business, the agents that are some of the most successful, they have found their big why. And it can change as your business changes. Maybe it becomes, you get to a certain point and you can donate X amount to your community or to a charity, or you get to take more time off with your family. I don't know, but you need to think about it. So this is your first homework assignment, is to think about your big why. And you can choose to share it with us as a group or not. That's perfectly okay. It's okay for it to be private. But it is something that you should be thinking about when you do your business plan every year, as to why am I stretching myself to this? Why do I want to do this? Because successful business owners have a big why. You read the biographies of some of the most successful business people, and they have these amazing stories about what's happened in their lives that pushed them. And then that continued to evolve as their businesses grew and they became able to do other things, whether it's innovation or, if you look at someone like Bill Gates, whose mission has become to be the world's most successful philanthropist based on the gazillions of dollars he made with his invention. That was the vehicle to get him to do that other thing. His why changed. So yours will as well. So whatever your big why may have been 5 years ago is not necessarily what it is now, and that's okay. Does that make sense to everybody? So the reason I'm having this sort of broader mindset conversation is because when we start to get into the actual implementation of how do we manage finances and how do we hold ourselves accountable and committed and truthful to what we're doing in our business plan, if we don't have SMART goals and we're not realistic and we don't have a big why and we don't think like a business person, then it's not going to change. You're going to do exactly the same thing next week that you did yesterday. Make sense? Okay. So we are exactly 1 hour in. I'm going to suggest that we take a 5-minute break. So we'll come back at 2:05. It's now 1:59. Everyone can get a drink, go to the washroom, check a message, and then we will restart. Does that work for everybody?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to pause what we're doing here. Okay, so thanks guys. Hope everyone had a good little break. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about money because this is key to this next whole part of how you're going to do your business. So everybody should have received a personal expense worksheet. So this is in Google Docs or Google Sheets, so really easy to work with. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about this one, for example. So when we are setting our business goals in terms of how many units you're going to sell, I will challenge most agents back to our original conversation to say, most agents don't know exactly how much money they actually need to make and how that will translate into units after business expenses to leave money for you as a family or as a person. Make sense? So if your goal for 5 units, 10 units, 25 units, whatever, 50 units, but is it actually enough money based on your average sales to actually provide you with what you need in your life? We often see agents who are selling, selling, selling and have no money. And unfortunately, it's because they aren't tracking their expenses. They don't actually know how much money they need to make, and they don't know what their business costs them. So it feels like the money is coming in and going right back out the arse end of the door. And they're not getting anywhere. They just think, I have to keep selling more. But that's not usually the answer. There are other solutions. Maybe we need to reduce the expenses. Maybe we need to work on different prospecting to change your average sale price from $250 to $275. Maybe you are discounting your commission and we need to track and teach you how to not do that and make more money every time. Instead of working harder, work smarter. But all of that knowledge and all of our ability to help you do that and run a successful business requires us to be able to analyze the business. And to be able to analyze the business, we need to know the financials. So think of, for example, from a real estate perspective, when you are talking to a client about purchasing an investment property, your focus is entirely on the financials of that business and whether or not that's a good investment. Fair? But yet we're not doing the same thing with our own business. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to look at our personal expenses. And so what you have here is a general worksheet. The concept behind this is that you're looking at it on a monthly basis because that's how everybody thinks. Everybody thinks monthly. It's just the way we work. Nobody goes, oh, my mortgage amount is this per year. Nobody says that. Everybody says what it is per month, right? Nobody says what their car payment is cumulative for the year. That would be terrifying. We all do it on a monthly basis. So the concept behind this is in this expense chart, you need to be filling out what you are responsible for in your household. So if, for example, you have another human in your household who pays X% of the bills, you don't put 100% of the number here. You put the amount you are responsible to provide to your commitment to that family member to contribute to the household. Does that make sense? Otherwise, I mean, if you add more, that's fine, but we need to make sure we at the very least have you gold to meet the needs of your life. So for example, if your mortgage payment is $1,000 a month and you have a significant other who pays half of it, oops, then I'm going to put, not up there, oops, I'm going to put it here. And it's either mortgage payment or rent. You're unlikely paying both, right? How much are you paying in house insurance? Maybe it's $68 a month. Are you paying property taxes? I don't know, $125, whatever the hell it is, right? You're going to go through this, and at the end, we're going to come up with a number that for some reason my formula is not taking. One moment. Oh, it still didn't take it. 1 second. You may have to do math because I obviously sent you a form with bad formulas. My apologies. Anyone that knows me very well knows that's not actually my skill set. Why is that not giving me my sum? B6 to B43. B6 to B43. I don't have an answer. You're going to have to do math. Sorry, I can't fix my formulas right now. So I want you to take 5 or 10 minutes, you know, just quickly throw out some numbers here. If you have ballpark ideas, the idea is that we are accounting for our life and coming up with an approximate number. If you don't know if your banking app or do whatever, we're going to pause for a couple minutes and I want you guys to just work on this for a second so that we have this working for you. Okay. Everybody good? Everybody has their sheet? Yes, no, yes.
Finally hear you now.
Okay. Can the rest of you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we'll take a minute and we'll work on that.
Lost where I was. I went back to your screen and then I lost my screen. One moment, please. My grand total for all my bills for a month?
Yep.
$23.60.
2360.
Yeah.
Okay, Nicole?
Sorry. My total, 3,500.
Alex?
4,300.
Sorry, what did you say? 40?
4,300.
Okay. Samit?
It's 5,000, 4850. I rounded it up to 5.
Yeah, that's Tara, I don't know if you had a chance to do your numbers sitting out in the beautiful sun. Do I have chat from her? Oh, working on it. Okay, perfect. Okay, so Kyle, what'd you come up with?
2950-ish.
Yep, ish is fine. Okay, so the reason this matters is that these are what I want you to think about as these numbers that you just gave us. Those are after-tax numbers. Think about it. Those are the net dollars that you need to come into you. So if I do Lynette, 2360 times 12, she needs $28,320 net. 3,500 times 12. Nicole needs 42,000. Alex needs 51,600. Samit is 60 because I'm smart like that. I can do that math one. And Kyle, 2,950. That's $35,400 net that you need to generate from your sales in order to just live your life. This is not going to Tahiti. This is not, you know, depending on how much you've put in savings and RSP to actually build. That's why I put those in there. Because if you have zeros now, they shouldn't be zeros. Okay? So whatever that number is, times 12 is a cash dollar that your business has to produce in order for you to live your life without stressing that you can't pay your bills and buy groceries. So when we're thinking like a business person, the first thing we need to make sure is that our business actually produces enough income to pay us.
Mm-hmm.
Does this make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Because what happens is we go the other way. We're like, oh, I'm going to do 100,000 GCI, but they don't actually know how much money that makes you. Fair?
Yeah.
Fair. Okay. So we now have some ballpark numbers, which we're then going to turn into something else. Yay. So the next thing we have to look at is, which one do I want? I don't want that one. Budget. Yes. So the first thing we have to look at is what does your, actually I'm going to go this way. We're going to do goals first. So I'm going to chat about this and look at your business expenses. Okay. So you're going to get this from me later. Okay. So I'm going to make this bigger so you can see it. Okay? Can everybody see?
Yeah.
So let's just say I'm going to use 100,000 just for what we've got. So I'm going to actually, I'll take Nicole. I'm going to pick on you for a minute. You said 250 at 25 units, right?
I actually looked it up and it was, well, we can use that if you want as a guesstimate, but I looked it up and it was 20 units at 235 average.
Okay, so 20 units times 235,000. So that's, oh wait, that's not what I want. 20 units, 235. So that gave you GCI last year of 117,500,000 approximately, based on a 2.5% commission. Okay, so let's just pretend we've got Nicole here and we're going to say 117. Okay, so we're going to get into details as to how we calculate that number in just a minute. So we know we have to pay ourselves, right? But the first thing we have to look at is, what does your business cost you? And this is where you actually need to like do some digging. You're going to have to do some homework, which is why you're going to have homework between now and Thursday. And that is to actually, you know, either look or investigate or discuss with myself or other members of the team as to what do certain things cost. So let's say, for example, maybe you do not have any type of an assistant. Okay, that's fine. Maybe this is a zero, right? Maybe you subcontract out to, you know, have people design flyers or do something like that, although there's no real need with command, but anyway, whatever, right? But maybe we're going to goal ourselves for 2021 that I want to be able to have someone to work 10 hours a week for me to grow my business, to do some of the data entry stuff that's not a good use of my time. So I'm budgeting, you know, $450 a month or $400 a month, $100 a week to pay someone, you know, 5-10 hours a week, depending what you're, you know, whatever, to be able to delegate tasks, just as an example, right? Because we're thinking like a business person. If I had 15 more hours in my week, how many more deals could I do if I wasn't, you know, entering listings or, you know, doing feature sheets or whatever? This is the business mindset. And maybe it doesn't change for this year, but it's that concept of thinking about it. You know, what does your cell phone cost you a year? Office supplies. So you might think, well, I don't really have office supplies, but are you buying, like, are you printing? Are you buying stuff for open houses? Are you, you know, I don't know, like, what are you buying? You're printing something at some point, probably. Are you paying for any programs or anything like that? What is that costing you? Coaching and training. So we always, you know, recommend that people have in their plan, you know, to attend a conference. Now, God only knows when anyone's going to a large conference anytime soon, but that doesn't mean you aren't attending virtual conferences, or you aren't paying to take courses online, or, you know, doing some of the coaching through KW, or, you know, various other things, and having that budget in your business to do business development on yourself, okay, is what we're looking at. So here it's essentially $500 a month that we've budgeted for something, whether that's training or travel or however you do that, right? And you might have nothing. We don't recommend nothing because ongoing training is essential, and we can provide a ton of it, but every once in a while, there's something else you want to take, okay? So whatever that number is, you can play with it. Automobile and travel. So if you add up your car payment, your car insurance, your car repairs, your gas on your car, I will bet you that you are, in most cases, more than $8,000. And let's assume that 75% of your vehicle is tax deductible through your business. What would then happen is, let's say you have a cost of $1,000 a month to operate your vehicle. On your budget sheet over here, under car, where's my car? You would only have the 25% number here. And the 75% number would go on the business sheet. Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
If your cell phone is here, it's your cell phone, 80% of your cell phone should be over on the business side. Unless you're paying for kids' phones or spouses' phones or something, and that part would be over here under personal. Do you see what I'm doing here?
Yeah.
I'm starting to divide what my business is expected to pay for. Okay, so for my I have 2 phones on my phone plan for work. And so my cell phone bill, if I looked at mine, where's my cell phone? I pay $200 a month for 2 phones. So I'm at $2,400. And then that's assuming I don't have any roaming charges or travel for one of my conferences, etc. So I'm probably closer to $3,000 for my phone when I actually look at my bills and add them up. Does that make sense to you guys? For my vehicle, I know what my car payment is. I know what my gas is, and I can take 75 to 80% of that and put that number in here. And the other 20% goes under my personal that I will get taxed for by my accountant as personal use at the end of the year. Make sense? Everyone smile and nod at me? Yep, okay. So looking at this, meals and entertainment, this is, of course, less now in this current year than you'll probably ever have, but this is taking a mortgage broker out for coffee or drinks or lunch, or, I'm doing something, I'm dropping off pizzas at my client's house on their moving day to, be a supporter, whatever, what is that number, right? We would always tell you to budget at least a couple $100 a month, just coffees and, dropping stuff off at partners and things, that adds up, right? So accounting and professional fees, getting your taxes done. Do you need to, are you incorporating, those kinds of things, board dues and licensing. So if you add up your MLS dues, your monthly dues, your education course, your license, your CREA dues, etc., you're going to run about $2,500 a month or a year to run your business, to stay licensed. Make sense? Then if you're a solo agent, you are going to have a cap, your max, that's your maximum expense as an agent and your maximum royalty. So those are a part of my cost of sales in my business. Does that make sense? Then I'm going to look at different things like marketing. You should not have an expense for a CRM. You should be using Command, which is free. So we shouldn't have one here, but maybe you do. Advertising, it says newspapers. I have social media advertising here down at the bottom, but depending on your geography, we have people who are in smaller communities, or like maybe even Nicole's down the South Shore and there's a really nice publication that gets put in all the stores there. It's shiny and glossy. And, maybe she decides she's going to, for her own name recognition, that's where people expect to find her as well as online, right? So we can't always discount the traditional ways. Printing, are you farming a neighborhood? Are you paying postage? Are you printing flyers? Are you sending stuff out regularly? Are you holding client appreciation events every year? Maybe it's not client appreciation events, but maybe it's that you budget that you're going to buy a nice bottle of champagne and a basket for every seller or buyer. You have planned to do 25 units, 25 times 200. That's my cost for marketing in my cost of sales to give closing gifts. Does this make sense to you guys? Okay. Do you pay to maintain or service the website? Client wows, repairs, gift cards, etc. Social media advertising. Are you paying to boost listings? Are you paying to advertise your services? Are there any other things you're doing to market your business? Do you sponsor a ball team? I don't know. Like, this is where we analyze what we're doing. And the concept is, for example, you've all been phoned at some point by some charity who wants to put your business card on their publication, or will you sponsor my team, or will you do this or that? And you should have a budget as to how much you're going to spend on those things. And you can make a decision that whether you've reached that budget for the year or not. And if you have, then you say, I'm so sorry to whomever it is that called. Please call me earlier next year before I've made my commitments, because that's how a business makes a decision about whether they're going to spend the money, because they have a budget, right? Smile and nod at me, everybody, right? Then we have transaction costs. Are you ordering signage? Are you printing, beautiful packages to put in your listings? How much does it cost to install a sign? What do you pay for videography, photography, virtual tours, Matterports, etc.? Like, what are you doing in your business that what do these things cost? So in this particular case, if we used just these random expenses, but just so you can start to see, so if Nicole's sales were 117,000, she has in essence 62,000 in costs That's including CAP, marketing, her car, her cell phone, advertising, going out for lunch, the whole thing. This is everything she needs to spend in her business, right? Then there's the tax man. So the tax man's not in here yet, okay? So Revenue Canada is going to take a portion of your profit, not of your sales, but of your profit, okay? So if you're at, say, a 20% tax bracket in your business because you're a sole proprietor, then, you know, they're going to take 10 grand off of this number and they're going to leave you with $44,000, right? So we said for Nicole that she needs $42,000 cash to pay her bills and maintain her life. So what do we know from, now this is with these fake numbers I've put in for expenses. We have no idea if these are real, but just based on if this was real. So if I now have 44,000 and I need 42,000 after taxes personally, do I have enough sales?
Just enough.
You do not have enough because you haven't paid taxes on your personal income that you pulled from this yet. So you're short probably about 15 grand. So you have two choices. Well, you have three choices. We can reduce expenses, which is the first thing. So for example, if I'm paying to do something and it doesn't actually add value or generate business, then why am I paying to do it? Make sense? But as realtors, you all pay for stuff just because. We've all done it, been there, done that, right? So I'll give you a perfect example. And we thought we were pretty good with our budget. We thought we were really lean. When COVID happened they closed the world on the Saturday, the 14th, or the Friday, the 13th. And then on Monday, this 14, 15, 16, my business partner and I were on the phone with our credit card statements open and we were slashing on the 15th of March. And we cut about $1,000 a month out of our budget. We have not missed those items at all. We didn't need them. So what are we doing? Now, of course, we have no gas expense right now compared to before, you know, but when we're looking at it, you know, so for example, if you've been dealing with the same photographer and, you know, you like the work, but is that, do you need a new fresh eye? Do you need a different quote? Does your partner offer a bundle package if you also do video, et cetera? Like, are you negotiating with your suppliers or are you just following along? Does this make sense to you guys? If you're paying to do things like advertising but you can't track a deal that came specifically from that thing, then you need to stop doing it. If you're putting something in the paper and no one has ever said to you when you've asked, oh my God, I saw your ad in the paper for 5 years and oh my God, there was no question I was going to hire you. Unless you've heard that, then maybe you should do something else. But we get caught in these routines because we're busy working in our business that we're not working on our business. Okay. So the other thing we can do is up our goals to create more sales, but that gets more complicated. We're going to talk about that. So expenses are your first place. The next thing we're going to look at, and I'm going to go over here to my bottom of my sheet, we're going to talk about goals. So we need to make sure that our goals accomplish our life. Makes sense, right? So if we said 100,000 as a gross commission goal, okay, the next thing that we can do to improve our income as a business is going to be to track our conversion rates so that every time we go on appointments, we are more effective. So you don't have to work harder, but you work smarter. And that we can work on things like commission structure, average price. Those things will allow you to make more money and not do more. That's how a business looks at the analytics of their profit and loss. Does that make sense to you guys? So let's say, for example, you want to do 100,000. So I'll pick on Nicole again. What percentage of your business is sales versus listings?
I did this math the other day. It's 65, based on last year, 65% listings and 35% sales.
Okay, so I'm going to leave you at 60-40. just because that's a pretty good solid average. We always want you to be high on listings if possible. It is challenging in this current market. So of your listings that you take, Nicole, what percentage of them actually sell?
I'd have to do the math if I,
Just gut for now.
maybe 80%.
Okay. And when you sit at a kitchen table, now less likely to be a kitchen table, but when you do go and see someone about listing their house, how many of the, out of every 10 listings you went to meet with, would they hire you?
I'd say about 70%.
Okay. So what about buyers? Of buyers that you work with, how many actually work on deals that close?
Probably closer to 70%.
Okay. And how many of those buyers that you meet do you actually get to go shopping with? Like that they hire you?
I'd say about 80.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how many times do you have now? Okay, I'm going to make an average. I'm going to use an average of 5 because right now there's one listing and you go look at one and then there's not another one for a week. And then you go look at one more with a buyer versus we used to go out and look at 5. Now that's not a thing, right? So we're going to assume 5 trips on average between a consultation and showing them a couple properties and then going out another time with mom and dad. And, you know, we would typically allow for about 5 appointments. We want them to be less, but that would be about an average. And you said, Nicole, your average sale price was $250?
235.
$235. 20. Oops. So you're at about $58.75 as your average commission. And how many weeks out of 52 do you plan to work?
Usually about 49.
So what this means is that in order to gross 100,000 GCI, which is not the goal you want, but just as a math. So let's say we said 125 for you, okay? You would need to do 21 units. Now remember, an end or a unit is a half a house, right? Because 2 units is a double end.
Yeah.
Right, so either a buy or a sale. It means you need this 13 listings to sell and 9 buyers to buy. So what this will do, you'll get this worksheet, is this allows you to work through the how many appointments you need in a week to break down. Because if I said to, so let's pick on Kyle, who's, you know, going to go from, I've been on vacation for 6 years, I'm teasing you, to I'm going to do 35 units. It's really helpful to go, okay, what do I need to do tomorrow? What is my big thing, my big one thing I need to do? So if this was Kyle's goal, then he needs to get his rear end sitting at 1.6 kitchen tables a week. So based on working 49 weeks. But that's a heck of a lot easier than saying I'm going to suddenly sell 30 units. I need an appointment every week. I need to sit with someone to talk about real estate who wants to hire me. So then what happens is our activities go back to how do I get those appointments? So do you see how we keep working backwards and breaking it down into little pieces? Think of yourself like a store or a restaurant. I need to make X amount of sales in a year, which means I need to be open this, if I'm open this many hours and this many people come through and sit down, then that means they'll have an average check of X, which means I will make X amount of money. That's what they're doing. You're doing exactly the same thing, except you're changing it over to kitchen table meetings. Okay. So what I would say, if I was looking at Nicole's numbers, and first of all, congratulations, Nicole, that you actually know your numbers, because most people do not. So what I would look at when I see this is what I instantly see is Nicole has a ton of potential because she's getting the appointments, but her conversion rates are not as high as I'd like them. So look at the difference, okay? If we switched her to getting to be at 90, I would want you in the 90s for listings sold. So let's just go to 90 from 80. Let's go to 80. You meet with 8 out of 10 of the people you sit at kitchen tables with hire you instead of 7. That's just one more person out of every 10. And same thing with buyers. Pre-qualifying our buyers in a greater way will increase your percentage of who will close, right? And what if we have systems that we learn that allow us to be more efficient and I don't need to go out as many times? So now I need, instead of needing 1.6 times 4 appointments, 1.6 times 4 was 6.5 appointments. Now I need 5 appointments instead of 6.5 appointments. So over the course of a month, of a year, that's less than 12 appointments you now don't need to make the same amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Which means you're not working as hard, but you're making more money. That's a good arrangement as a business. That makes business sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But what if I kept those same 13 appointments, but my conversion rate increased? Now I would increase my commission by 50 grand. So the reason that this matters, and it might seem overwhelming right now, and I get that, and we'll get this to you to work with, is the concept that if we are not tracking what you are doing, we cannot help you. We cannot figure out where is the spot in your business that needs training, that needs help. So maybe, for example, Nicole's like, yeah, I get 10 listing appointments, but I'm only 6 of them are signing me. So what tells me there is there's something in your listing presentation. Maybe you don't know how to close. I mean, I don't mean you personally, but you know, in that scenario, maybe you don't know how to close and ask for the sale. Maybe you're getting sign leads on your listings, but you don't know how to convert them. Does this make sense to you guys? Because a business is analyzing what's happening in order to determine what do we need to do. If you're a store, maybe you're doing a Christmas sale in order to clear that inventory so you can repurchase for the spring. So you see how if you think that way, that you're thinking ahead?
Yeah.
So maybe I need to, make a change in my listing presentation. Maybe I need to change my buyer script. So maybe I need to train on that. And until we know what you're doing or what you're aiming to do, because you have a SMART goal, we can't figure out where's the hole to help you. Might look at it and look at your expenses and go, wow, you're spending $10,000 on something. How many deals did that give you? And you're like, well, I didn't specifically get any, but everybody knows my name from that. Well, then that's not quantifiable. That's not a smart business decision if you can't measure the result of the thing. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So then maybe you go, okay, let's cut it. And it'll be interesting to see whether it makes any difference in your volume. In most cases, it does not, right? But you've just changed your overhead. And this is that concept of thinking like a business in measuring how you're going. So if we go back to what we're trying to do here, the other piece of this is this conversion rate. So here's a mindset conversation. And this is exactly how retail stores and successful businesses think, is if I can get X amount of people through my door or traffic to my website, my conversion rate will mean that I will make X amount of income. You've heard this analogy a million times, right? So for you, your conversion rate is kitchen tables, right? Or Zoom meetings in 2020, whatever, right? So if I can get them to book a consult with me or let me do a listing appointment, I'm going to get 9 out of 10 of them, or I'm going to get 8 out of 10 of them, or whatever the number is, right? So that means my activities have to create those appointments. But it means that every time I have an appointment, so if we go back to this being a magical theory for Nicole, this number, because we've built in these conversion rates down here, that, essentially 30% of what she does is not successful, but 70% is. Every single time she goes on an appointment, based on the numbers we've put in here, she's earning $1,921 towards her $100,000. Because we factored in the failure rate.
Mm-hmm.
So if every time you meet with someone, you're like, cha-ching, I'm $1,900 closer to my goal, that has a mindset difference. Same idea as a store going, okay, if we get 1,000 people through in December, then statistically 80% of them who come in will buy, which means our average sale price is $40 a person, which means we will reach our sales target for December. That's how businesses forecast. Make sense? So the other thing is when we're looking at our budget, something that's not by default in here, but I am going to strongly recommend that there is. And we're going to talk about business practices in a minute to wrap up for today, is this concept of planning your savings as a business. So successful businesses, and if you think about our scenario now, of course, I could never have planned for a pandemic in the 17 years I've taught this course in essence. One of the conversations I've had with every business planning course I've ever taught is the concept that you need to essentially winter-proof your business. You need to be like a squirrel who are gathering up their nuts and keeping it all nice and snug in the tree so that when business slows or the market slows or you take a vacation or you're ill or I don't know, there's a global pandemic, you still have the money to pay yourself and your business commitments every month. You are essentially no longer functioning with that commission check to commission check, paycheck to paycheck mindset that realtors function in. You know what I'm talking about, guys?
Yep.
So my goal for you, and this might make you want to vomit right now, but trust me, if you work at it, it's worth it. My goal for you is that you have 6 months of personal and business expenses saved in a savings account. Now that takes time. It's not going to happen in your first year, but I can tell you it will never happen if you don't start planning. So let's say we take, I'm going to take Alex's goal. You said you need $4,300 to live your life personally if you didn't sell another house for a month. You need $4,300, right? So that would mean if we do 4,300, I want you to have 3 months minimum, but 6 is better. So that means we need 25 grand sitting that we are earning and just we're slowly tucking it away in a savings account and we're not touching it. You don't ever touch it until your cushion gets bigger and bigger that you can then use it for other things and invest. Buy an investment property, buy a car, do whatever you want, okay? But so that would mean if I'm planning for that, I would potentially here put savings. So that means that on an annual basis, if I do savings and I do 6 months personal draw, which is what you're basically doing, you're being able to draw and pay yourself out of your business, you need 25 grand, right? Now, this may not happen in your first year. So maybe you go, okay, I'm going to get 10, I'm going to get 2 months cushion in my first year. And then the next year, I'm going to double that. Does this make sense what you're starting to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's how a business survives. Okay, think about COVID. The businesses that are going to come out of this and still have a business have cash reserves. It's that simple. When you are a self-employed business owner, there's nobody who's going to magically drop money into your account if you haven't prepared for it. So maybe you also have that you're doing savings. Maybe, so I'll give you an example for us. We have a full-time transaction coordinator. She would very like to make sure that we pay her every single week and month when we pay her. So my business partner and I have a commitment to make sure that we always have enough savings to make sure we can pay her for X amount of months, that we can pay our sign suppliers, our web suppliers, our CRM, blah, blah, blah. We have to have that set aside. So maybe my savings for my essential business expenses, if my essential business expenses were say $3,000 a month, that like I have to pay my dues, I have to pay this, I have to pay gas for my car, I have to pay my cell phone. You have to pay those things, right? If you don't pay those things, you're not going to do real estate for very long. So maybe I need 5,000 set aside in year 1, and then in year 2, I'm going to get it to 10. So essentially what that means is that I need to goal myself to do an extra 3 deals or whatever based on what it is in my first year that I'm going to put away and I'm going to save. And it's not very sexy. It's not very exciting to set yourself a goal to sell a house, to put it away. But when you get into situations like what we're having now with where we couldn't do the same amount of real estate, or the market drops, or I don't know, you get ill, something happens, something in your personal life, you need to step back. would be a very different business if you weren't panicked about what you're going to do next month when your bills come in. But that's how businesses function. They think in terms of cash flow safety nets. But realtors don't. They all just think it's just all going to work out. Next month, I'm going to sell another one and it's going to be perfect. Great, congratulations. If your business is that well established and you never hit a bump, bully for you. But here's the other thing. Have you ever been on the other side of a deal with an agent? You can smell the desperate. There's an actual sound on the phone to that voice. And you're like, wow, I can so attack you on the other side of this deal because you need this to close more than I do. It's a totally different way to work with clients when you're like, yeah, you know what, if this doesn't close this month and we end up leaving and going on to another deal, that's fine, we'll find another house, no worries. You're like completely zen about it because you've got a cash flow plan and you're not stressed. Has anybody ever heard the expression like attracts like? Yeah, yes? No. Have you? So sometimes you'll deal with a professional in any industry, I don't mean real estate necessarily, and you're like, wow, who hires that person? They are unpleasant, right? You've had that experience, right? Just admit it, I'm not the only one who thinks this, right?
Oh, no, I think it, yeah.
So that client is probably kind of similar to that person in whatever industry. And you're like, wow, they're a great pair. I'm so glad they're not my client. I'll be happy over here, right? When your business is established with a plan, you don't have to take on clients that are unpleasant. You don't have to do deals that are geographically ridiculous and make no sense because you're going to drive an hour and a half to an area you don't really know to sell a $150,000 thing. Instead of, spending 18 hours doing that, you could look for a client more locally because you're not as stressed about not having that paycheck on that silly deal because we have a plan. That's how businesses think. I want you guys in control of your income. I want you in control of your market and in control of how you live your lives. And part of that, as unglamorous as it is numbers and knowing what your business costs you. For example, if you take a listing and you know that on average you spend X amount of hours on a listing, you spend X on a photographer, you spend Y on a sign installation, you commit to X amount for advertising that listing, etc. You could pretty well figure out that you're spending, including your time, I don't know, maybe $4,000 on a listing. And your hard costs, not including your time, might be $1,000. I don't know, depends on what you do. So if you plan to have, if we go back to the other sheet and we say, okay, so Nicole, she needs 13 listings, but she took 14 because we changed your conversion rate in this case. Yeah. So in the South Shore, they don't really pay to install signs, but in Halifax they do. Nobody puts up their own signs in Halifax. And so if you're running $60 a sign times 14, that's my budget for signs. If I'm going to have 15 listings and my photography cost is $500 per listing, it's not hard to figure out what my budget is. Yeah. If I assume a third of my listings I'm going to pay for a staging consultation and my staging consultation costs X, well, I can figure that math out. Do you guys see what I'm starting to do? In terms of a cost of sales. Think about a store, think about Apple, okay? I'm an iPhone girl. So let's think about Apple. Apple knows right to the last minutia of a penny how much it costs them to make and sell a phone. They can count between their advertising and their platform and their stores and their shipping and their receiving and their all of that. They know exactly what it costs and what they expect their profit margin to be on every single product they sell. You expect that that's what they're doing, right? You guys have that expectation that they would know that, right? Yeah. So you want to sell $10 million worth of something, but you have no idea how much money you're spending on. Do you see the mindset there? So long and short of it is you're going to get these charts from me and I want you to play with them, okay? And then we'll talk about them again when we go forward. Again, the concept is making sure that we have enough money that we're planned for to both pay ourselves and pay our business expenses. So when you're looking at your expenses, I want you to remember on your personal side to look at the percentage. I didn't tell you that at first because it would just confuse everybody when I first told you. To look at the percentages on these items that are work-related versus personally related. So I'll give you an example. My internet cable. I am able to deduct about 35% of my internet bill at home towards my home office expense. So I can take that internet bill and put X here, and my business is expected to pay the difference. Right? So it allows you to actually play with your numbers a little bit more. So the other thing I want to talk about, just to close us off for today, is I want to chat about business practices, and we'll talk a little bit more about this on Thursday. But if we have this mindset that I've been harping at you about now for 2 hours, about how you're running as a business and how you're tracking and how you're paying attention to these types of expenses, what it will do is it will change your activities. And we're going to talk about that on the next session about, okay, so now I've said I need to do X amount of units. How in the world am I going to get them? That's the next part. So don't worry, I'm not going to leave you stranded without that information. But the other piece of this is, are you actually set up like a business? So Lynette, I already know the answer for you because you're mine, and therefore, if you didn't, I would have beat you by now with a stick. So let me talk about when you get a commission check. So Nicole, when you get it, because you know you're my other cute girl whose face I can see. So when you get a commission check, where does it go?
In the bank.
Okay, what bank account does it go into?
Into my main bank account. I take the HST and put that in a separate bank account to not be touched.
Okay, so when you say your main bank account, what else is in that main bank account?
Like, you mean like my savings?
Do you mean like, do you pay your mortgage out of that account? Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Where does their commission checks go? Kyle's goes out the window. Samit, what about you?
Yeah, it goes to one account and then I split it differently into different accounts. I have a few different accounts set up for savings, like HST, vacation, things like that.
Okay,
So
but is
kind
it
of
your
put
main, is your commission check being deposited into like a family bank account?
Yes, you can say
Yes.
that. Yes, it's not
Okay.
a business account, no.
Okay, so here is your number one aha moment I need you guys to get from this. You do not need a business account. You do not need to pay business dues or business fees to have separate banking unless you're incorporated like I am, and then you have to. That's different, okay? So this is your, CRA will eat you alive, okay? So you need a separate checking account, separate. I don't care if it's a personal checking account, but it has to be that no other money touches that account. So you give this whole new account number to Linda at KW and she will pay you in that account. So what happens is you get your $5,000 commission check and it goes into this checking account. That is your business account that only receives money from Keller Williams, period. It's the only money that goes into that account. And out of that account, you pay your car, your cell phone, your signage, your NSAR dues, your dinner for a mortgage guy, whatever, you know, gift bags for an open house, whatever, balloons, anything that's related to your business comes out of that account. And you pay yourself. So let's say, for example, Lynette needed $2,360 a month. So she's going to pay herself $600 a week out of that account into her personal account. So out of this business account, we're calling it a business account, but it doesn't have to be a business account. Only business transactions are happening. You're paying NSAR, you're paying NSREC, you're paying a sign guy, you're paying a photographer. Everything happens out of this account. You get a separate Visa, separate MasterCard, a separate debit card. Why? Why does this matter? Number one, if you mingle your money, Revenue Canada can look at every single Walmart purchase you've ever made in the entire time you've been doing business to determine whether this gift bag was personal or was this gift bag for a client. Did you buy wine for a client? and or you drank it, or no, that's when you drank it. If you mingle your money, you are opening yourselves up to an auditing nightmare. I cannot explain what a miserable, horrible experience this will ever be for you if you are ever challenged on anything. And I want you to think about it. Let's go back to mindset at the beginning. You're selling $6,250,000 worth of widgets, Nicole. Does the giant widget company pay their babysitter out of their business account? Well, legally, no. But do they go and buy shoes, coats, clothing, go for dinner, buy birthday gifts, buy dog food? No, that does not happen out of their business account. A business does not mingle their money. They pay their business owner a dividend. They pay them a salary based on the budget that you have established. Does this make sense to you guys? Here's the other thing. If I said to you, I would like you to look at your bank account and tell me exactly which purchases from stores like Superstore, Walmart, Sobeys, Dollar Store, etc., were business related versus personal. Can you do that?
Yeah.
Probably not.
With a receipt, but not from the bank account.
You can't run a financial statement and determine that, can you? You can't figure out your cost of sales without doing an awfully deep dive into a giant shoebox of receipts, right? So a business knows their expenses. If you wanted to evaluate your business functionality and what you're spending on photographers and expenses and all this sort of stuff, if you had it all in one bank account, you could print out a report and boom, you'd know it. You'd know right away. So I'm not suggesting you're going out and spending $100 in service charges on a bank. I'm telling you to open up a 1099 business account or a separate checking account. And from there, move your payments over. So I'll give you an example. If I go to the grocery store and I buy gift cards for clients for closing all the time at the grocery store. If I'm at the grocery store aisle, I put the little doodad thing down and I have 2 orders with 2 different credit cards because I have 2 different receipts. You're never going to find strawberries on my gift card receipt envelopes or receipts. So, or, you know, chicken, because that has nothing to do with the client. So they're never going to question my expenses from that store because I clearly separate it. Make sense? Because this is a business mindset. So when we talk about taxes, this is where you also can have those free online savings accounts that don't actually cost any money. And you have one that you have your HST sitting in and another one where you have your savings sitting in that we're putting aside, remember, for our cushion. This is just business fundamentals 101. You can have like a $500 limit on an extra credit card. Like it doesn't have to be, you're not going to Tahiti with it. You just need to be able to buy, you know, wine at the liquor store for a client and have it be a separate purchase. Make sense? If you slip up and you're like, oh my God, I forgot the other bank card, and you buy something with the other one, then you actually take the receipt and transfer the money to yourself from one account to the other. When you start to show those practices, Revenue Canada knows that you're actually separating your expenses. Okay? I don't want anyone to have problems with Revenue Canada. I also want you to be able to measure and track your business. And if you have everything all mixed in together, you can't check your business. You can't see what it's doing. Does this make sense to you guys? Okay, so that is your like absolute homework. If you are mingling your money, please, please, please open up another checking account. Can be, I mean, I can tell you when I first did it, I'm with RBC and my credit cards were both silver and my company name is Anda Silva Limited and my regular credit card was Anda Silva. It was very confusing. I had to put a sticker on my credit card so I could tell which one was which so that I didn't accidentally buy the cute shoes with the Anda Silva Limited credit card, right? But it does make it really easy because I can always just pull up my reports and track what I'm doing in my business. I don't always like what I'm seeing. That's not the point, right? Power is your knowledge to run a successful business. Okay. Does this make sense to you guys on that?
Absolutely.
Okay. And the one last thing I want to talk about as a business practice is related to HST. So who here likes to pay HST?
Oh, stop it. Yeah.
You no, and this will make sense to you. Okay, Samit, did you say yes, you want to pay HST?
No, I don't want to pay HST. That's what I'm
Okay, so we're going to have a big mindset shift, and I'm going to leave you with this for today. When you collect HST, it's not your money, right? It's the government's money. You're just holding it for them, right? So when you pay HST, it means that you made more money than you spent.
correct.
If you write off all of the HST, that means your expenses exceeded your revenue. That means you are essentially ass upside down in your business. A profitable business is handing over all the HST they collected on behalf of the government. You want to pay all the HST out because it means your expenses are low and your profit is high. I'm not talking about paying taxes. I'm talking about HST. You are a holding company for HST. If you paid 15% on expenses and you paid out more than you got, then you did not make money. You have no profit. Does this make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
You want to pay bags and bags and bags of HST to the government because that means you are making money every quarter. It means you're managing your expenses and you're paying out way less than you're bringing in. That's a big shift, isn't it?
I mean, I like it, but yes.
It's not your money,
Yeah, I know.
right? So the more you pay out, the means the leaner and the more profitable your business. If you're getting HST back, you have a problem. You're upside down. You are instantly in the red if you are getting HST back. In your first year, it's a little different. You paid for your licensing course and big ticket items. But if you're getting HST back, you're spending more than you're making. This is business 101. So you want to pay tons of HST. Here, take it. That means you are making money. That you're making profit. Because that's the word that we want, right? We want that 6-letter word in our business. We want to be profitable. So in order to be profitable, you need to know how much money you're spending, which means you need to stop mingling your money. And then we need to have the mindset that because I run a business, I'm tracking my expenses. And I'm paying attention to what I'm spending, and I'm paying attention to what I'm doing. I'm not promising that this is super fun and exciting all the time. That I did not promise. But when you have really good profit and a really stable business, it changes your life. It changes your stress level. It changes how you go on appointments. It changes what you can do for yourself and your family. So it's a really small compromise to make to get you to that place in your business. So I'm just going to recap what we've talked about today. We've talked about mindset. We've talked about mindset a lot. We've talked about business people versus salespeople. We've talked about business ownership. We've talked about the millions of dollars of product that you're selling or you want to sell, your goal to sell. We've talked about SMART goals and how when we're starting to measure what we're going to do, is it specific? Is it measurable? And we'll see that when we get into the action items on Thursday, in the sense of if I say, oh, I'm going to do 10 listing appointments a week. Okay, how, where, is that reasonable? Is that realistic, right? We'd rather you do 2 and have a 90% conversion rate than do 10 and have 20%, because that's just exhausting. The thought of that is exhausting, right? So being smart about what we're doing. We've talked about our big why. We've talked about looking for that, because when I'm asking you to dig deep and to change habits in your business, you're going to need more than profit to drive you to do that. You're going to need that, what is my whatever. And again, it can change, but what is it right now? That's all we need. We've talked about your personal budget and starting to pay attention. And so part of your homework is what we usually recommend is that you basically look at 3 months worth of bank statements and kind of average those out, because that'll account for like Christmas, seasonality, birthdays, vacations. Like, it kind of gives you the, now everybody's grocery bill, mind you, for the last 3 months is way higher, but your takeout and restaurant bill might be cheaper. So, the idea is to go through and actually figure out what are you actually spending versus what you think you're spending. What'll be interesting as well when you do this is you'll see things like, I used to spend $40 a week on Tim Hortons or Starbucks, and I haven't done that in weeks, and guess what? I've survived. Maybe I'm going to cut that budget and stop spending that money and, you know, change what you're doing, for example, right? So looking at your personal budget and then doing the math associated with that with respect to what items are actually business related, and sort of dividing that percentage up. We talked about your business expenses. We talked about having a sense of sort of planning out. If you're going to do 12 units, 12 times photography, trying to get some goals in terms of that so that we can work on those together for you. So I'm going to email out these forms for you. And then the last thing we talked about was best practices for financial success, in the sense of not mingling your money, HST, thinking about tracking and paying attention. So I do realize that this is a lot of material to shove through a Zoom video into your brains in a short period of time. Do you have any questions that I haven't answered today on what we've covered?
I have a statement.
Yes.
I have done business planning with a bunch of brokerages and trainers, and not one has touched it the way you have. Most of them have the same numbers. They run down to X amount of listings, do X amount of buyers, yada, 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 but they don't create an actual business. And you've actually changed my business mindset with this, like having money in a savings account to pay my bills for 6 months business-wise. Yeah. So I really appreciate this business planning.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And what I suggest from today is, like, you're going to leave and you're going to kind of feel numb a little bit. I'm not going to lie. It's a lot on the head, especially when it's new information. Is this will be recorded. You will have the ability to go back and see it again if you wish. It's also something, when we do this, I always encourage everybody to take the business planning every single year, because your business is constantly changing and evolving. And it's sort of like, first year, you kind of like, okay, I got the money sorted. I've not stopped mingling. I've started to track. But then the next year, you're in a new mind place because your business has changed, and you take something else from it, right? So what I most of all want to commend all of you on is actually just being here, because until you have this conversation, you don't even know what you don't know, right? For lack of a better word, right? And we'll work with you. We're going to do the second session and talk about how do we implement this. And you guys are going to work on your numbers over the next 2 days. And then we're going to sort of, I'm going to invite you guys to send me your worksheets before the session on Thursday. If there's something that's confidential that you don't want me to share with the group, please just send it. When you send me the email, just say, you know, can you just ignore this part or not talk about this? I will absolutely respect your privacy. But the idea is that we work through some of these scenarios together, because it'll give you different ways of looking at it. And then we're going to talk about how do we actually do this to create these appointments and all of that. And then knowing that going forward, once we start this process, it might be 3 months in, Kyle, you might call me and go, okay, I need to do a 45-minute session with you on where the hell I am with my numbers and my goals. And we regroup because we have something that we've tracked. I'll give you the easiest examples. People say to me, you know, my sales are down this year, or like my numbers are down. And I'm like, okay, well, what's your conversion rate on your listings? How many listing appointments did you go on? I don't know. How many appointments did you get? I don't know. You know, how many people did you meet? I don't know. How many people in your database? I don't know. I can't help you with that, because the only answer I've got is, well, you'd have to do more, but maybe you don't need to do more. Maybe you need to change how you close. Maybe you're doing everything else right, but you're not actually sealing the deal. But I can't tell that till I know what you did. Make sense? So instead of you running out and thinking, oh my God, like I'm exhausted, I'm not making any money and whatever, like, you know, I can tell you as an example, we've made changes during COVID. Our virtual seller presentation is now better than our in-person presentation because of our ability to move through screens and do all this stuff that we can't do sitting together around a kitchen table. Our goal is to never sit at another kitchen table ever to do a listing presentation. It's more efficient. Our close rate is higher. Customer satisfaction is higher. We're more efficient. We're more organized. Takes less time. It doesn't take 3 hours. It takes an hour. So it's a better decision. But we had to figure that out. But we couldn't tell that without tracking. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. So I'm going to email you the worksheet for your, you have your personal one. We've now fixed the formula thanks to Nicole and Samit. So you guys stick the semicolon in and bingo, you're going to have numbers. And or colon, it's not semicolon, colon. And I'm going to send you the other one with the budget and the goal sheet. Just fill it out the best you can. Just don't delete cells because they domino through to each other. Okay. And then I'm going to ask you to send those to me by about noon next week. I don't need to see them a long time, or by noon on Thursday, so I can see them and have them loaded on my screen so that we can work through them together. And if you have any questions or challenges between now and then that you need to reach out to me personally, please do not hesitate to do so. And I thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks, Anne.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Bye.